Hey guys, as Brandon said, my name is Anastasia. A little background about me. I got into the blockchain space about a year ago. And since then, I've kind of, like I said, joined 2 different blockchain companies, Ubiquity LLC, as well as TX Universe, which is a consulting firm for anything blockchain related. And I'm a huge supporter of Nexus. I'm just a volunteer for them. And I heard about this project back in August. And then at the end of September, I had a chance to go to the Nexus conference in Aspen, Colorado. And got in touch with the team, learned more about it, and have kind of been a huge fan of it ever since. So basically, what is Nexus? Nexus means a connection or a series of connections linking 2 or more things. So the philosophy of Nexus is really connecting people together, connecting technologies together, and kind of creating a more connected world in general. So what exactly is it? First of all, it's a peer-to-peer network, which is basically a blockchain. It's a cryptocurrency, which gives us a quick and secure transfer of value. It's an updated and improved blockchain protocol. So Colin Cantrell, who is the creator of Nexus, started in 2014, and he really took Satoshi's vision and his technology and has improved on it from the ground up. It's also a decentralized internet. We are creating a satellite network in space to create free internet for everybody around the globe. And lastly, it is a quantum-resistant cryptography solution. Again, so basically Nexus has 3 main principles. The first one is efficient and scalable code, and we're doing that through 2 new technologies. The first one is the 3-dimensional chain, and then the second one is the TAO Framework. The second principle is quantum-resistant security. As I mentioned, quantum computers can come about in the next 5 to 10 years. Right now, they're not able to solve all kinds of problems, but there is some code out there that could possibly create specific tasks that quantum computers could solve. And then the third principle is decentralizing the decentralization. And we're doing that through a decentralized internet network through using hardware and software. So the 3-dimensional chain is really the main innovation that Nexus has come up with. First of all, it's the scalability solution. While Bitcoin scales in only one direction, the 3DC does it in 3 directions. It's also the cryptographic architecture of Nexus, and it's the decentralization of mining. So the innovation is to replace the mining pool with the blockchain itself, with miners being rewarded for each contribution instead of just each block. This is a representation of the 3rd-dimensional chain, and I'm going to go over it a little bit. So the blue Z-axis is your time going forward as the blockchain builds. And then the yellow lines are the X dimension. That's going to be fluid. So basically it either increases or decreases in size based on the number of transactions being handled at any time. So if there's a lot of transactions, it will expand. If there's less transactions, it will contract, and it's dynamic. The green-red Y line above the Z represents trust, which is basically the time that you spend contributing to the network. Nodes on the network are given more importance the longer they have been contributing, and if there's a rule broken, such as a double spend attempt, the trust will be reduced for any nodes verifying the data was accurate. And then on the bottom there is the purple-green Y line, and that represents the weight of the data, which is basically the amount of work contributed. Think of the transaction that first arrives as being processed first, and these transactions are worked on and given weight. As more transactions arrive, these weighted transactions will not need to be worked on again, freeing up resources to work on the newer ones. So the 3-dimensional chain basically works like this. Many contributors using 3 different mining methods are working and being rewarded for each block, which increases decentralization. And because many people contribute, only small amounts of data need to be provided, removing the need for expensive mining machines or large farms and processors. You can mine Nexus on your laptop, and eventually you'll be able to do it on your cell phone too. And this reduces the amount of input any one system has to process, making it more secure. So Nexus has 3 different mining channels. The first one is your CPU prime. That looks for a specific cluster of set length, and this type of calculation is resistant to ASIC mining, again allowing for greater decentralization and decreasing the chance of large mining pools. The second one is GPU hashing. This is just your traditional hashing channel. It adds a random nonce, which is a non-reusable arbitrary number issued in an authentication protocol. It hashes the data and then compares the resultant hash against a predetermined format set by the difficulty. And the last one is proof of stake. So this is actually how you can mine Nexus from just your laptop. You can receive the coin rewards by continuously operating your node, which is your wallet. And the recommended staking minimum is 1,000, but it's not impossible to stake with less. It just becomes harder to maintain trust, and losing trust resets the interest rate back to 0.5% per year. The maximum is 3% per year. Now we get into the security. So whereas Bitcoin has a difficulty adjustment interval measured in weeks, Nexus can respond to increased hash rate in the space of 1 block, and each channel scales independently of the other 2, so the 3 of them work together. This stabilizes the block times to ensure that no single channel can monopolize block production. And this also means that a 51% attack is much more difficult to launch because an attacker would need to control all 3 channels. So they would have to have 51% of the coins, the volume, 51% of the nodes, and 51% of the hashing power. And on top of that, they must also have more weight, which is the amount of work, and trust, amount of time contributed, than the established chain, which is pretty difficult to do, if even possible. Another security feature is that miners cannot fork the chain since they will not be setting the rules. The nodes will actually do a lot of that processing. What Nexus uses is transactional based rules, which means that the network will be able to soft force update any new rules without changing the core code. And the TAO is that core code. In the future, any soft updates will be voted on by the community. So the TAO framework is basically the roadmap to creating the 3DC. And it comes in 3 different stages. The first one is Tritium. That's going to be the trust wallet that the developers are working on right now, with transaction level locks using a signature chain. Amin is going to be the improved proof of stake trust system and activation of the 2nd tier locking groups. And an Obsidian is actually going to be the decentralized mining pool where miners contribute directly to the Nexus network. One of the best parts about Nexus is that the developers are working on the code being quantum resistant. So this is, I'm not a very technical person, so this is how much I understand about it. I've broken it down into pretty simplistic terms. Basically, quantum computers have the capacity to see all possible combinations of code at once. A qubit, which is a unit of quantum information, can assume a value of 1 or 0 simultaneously, while a traditional bit can only be 1 or 0 at a time, so it could either be on and off. So this simultaneous value is the superposition state that permits quantum computers to process a higher number of data possibilities and lets them break through code a lot quicker. Bitcoin uses the secure hash algorithm of 256, while Nexus is using a combination of both Skein and Kekuk to create 1024-bit hash security. And those 2 algorithms won a bunch of awards in cryptography as being some of the first ones that are quantum resistant. Basically, the analogy is that's like having a safe with 1024-bit combinations instead of 256. Which one is harder to crack? The second way that Nexus is quantum resistant is through signature chains. So Colin created these signature chains that work in a specific way. Basically, when you create a transaction on a network, you claim ownership of your signature chain by revealing the public key of the next hash. The next hash is the hash of your previous public key, and producing a signature from the corresponding private key. It then creates a new next hash and corresponding contract. This contract can be a receive address, it can be a debit, a vote, or any other type of rule that is written into the contract code. And so because of these next hashes, you can have multiple parallel one of them on the sig chain. So they're constantly working and you constantly have many of them. That means that you never use the same key twice, and you never actually know the public key until you see it or until you use it. If you have all of these next hashes that are kind of moving quickly, before all of your information, a computer with 1 million of qubits wouldn't be able to do anything, since you'll be hundreds of keys away. Okay. So a big part of Nexus is the satellite system. And when Colin got together with Keith Smith, who is one of the other main developers on the project, they really talked about how, we're building this blockchain. It's a decentralized software system. We're trying to, kind of get away from centralized systems, but we're still using centralized hardware. So we're still on, the internet that is controlled by big companies and monopolies that can maybe shut it down all the time or make it harder for you to actually be on the internet, or they could censor it in some way. So a decentralized hardware is resistant to censorship, and that's what Nexus wants to bring to the world. In partnership with Vector Space Systems, which is an aerospace company that deals with specifically smaller satellites, is designing communication CubeSats to be launched into low Earth orbit in 2019. They did a test one in May, and then they're going to be doing 12 more commercial launches with their Vector R rockets in 2019, and eventually there's going to be as many as 100 per year at full launch capacity. So Nexus will be able to use some of those launches each year out of the 100. Galactic Sky is business unit of Vector Space Systems, and they provide software-defined satellites. So the partnership offers Nexus a way to launch the CubeSats with custom software that we're creating, and then Vector will have the opportunity to beta test through us. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. A standard 1U CubeSat weighs less than 1.33 kilograms. So each launch can put approximately 25 satellites into orbit, which is 66 kilograms maximum for that rocket. Galactic Sky will obtain licenses for specific frequencies, which must stay within broadcasting limits, and that just means that the amount of watts is limited due to radiation concerns, so they can handle all of that documentation and make sure that we're above board. Currently, these small cube satellites can cost anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000, which in the aerospace industry is basically chump change, because you can have rockets and satellites that cost millions and millions. We need a total of about 1.5 million for a mesh network of 200 satellites around the world. And that's obviously, we'll have to see, if that is the right number. It could be more, it could be less. Obviously, anything can happen in space as well. So in the future, we might have to, put up more satellites or take some down for whatever reason. Because of that, Nexus will also build its own satellites parallel to what Galactic Sky is doing with us. And that can be purchased with a Nexus coin. Just like the wallet is a node, so is a satellite. So you can actually buy your own satellite, throw it into space, and that's your node within the system. And then last part is above 60 kilometers around the world is international space. So running satellites is actually an extreme standard in the aerospace industry. It's not that difficult, and it's definitely doable. The economics of Nexus. We're going to have 70 million Nexus coins overall over an initial 10-year distribution period. Reward gradient for mining Nexus follows a decaying logarithmic curve instead of the reward having inherent to Bitcoin. This avoids creating a situation where older mining equipment is suddenly unprofitable and encourages miners to continue upgrading their equipment over time. I just want to note that we are in no way trying to replace Bitcoin. We actually want them to eventually, for the community, to look at the new upgraded protocol and maybe, put it into the Bitcoin protocol as well, because then it's Satoshi's vision with all of the problems that have happened in the last 9 years, that, proof of concept. And now Colin basically improved on it, and that code can be brought back into Bitcoin and adopted if the community decides that that's the way it wants to go. After 10 years, coin supply will inflate annually by a max of 3% via staking, and that's only if 100% of the coins are staked. That's pretty much impossible. That would mean that everybody's just holding their coins and not moving them around or doing anything with them. That means that, that the trust never falls, that somebody never turns off their computer for whatever reason or gets off the network. So that's pretty impossible. It'll probably be closer to 2% via staking, and then 1% via the prime and hashing channels. Instead of degrading the value of existing coins, which is usually what inflation does, the cost of providing security to the blockchain is paid by the inflation, eliminating transaction fees. And it follows the pattern of gold over the last 400 years. Gold is usually right up in that inflation, in those inflation numbers, because everybody's constantly mining just a little bit of gold here and there. And some future features that we have to look forward to. Because of the scalable solution with the 3-dimensional chain, first we have the Tritium wallet that's coming up. There will be two-way signatures to prevent loss of coins. We're going to have reversible transactions, sync-less wallets, because the transactions will process on the trust network, and free transactions. So if you guys think that this is a viable project, which through all of my research that I've done, I definitely think it's possible and very, very probable. The team is great. They're really focused on, bringing a technology, a free technology, to people around the world. This is something that could really, really help third world countries that are unbanked, that don't have stable access to the internet. That would be expensive for them to build that infrastructure. Through these satellites, there will be ground stations too that connect them, and it could be anywhere around the world. So they'll be able to use this technology for free. So if you want to invest, the first thing I would suggest is join the community. We are a huge community of very passionate people. We want everybody to be involved in this project and to contribute whatever it is that they want to contribute, and to be passionate about whatever it is that they're adding to the table. I talked to Colin at the conference, and I was like, I want to be Nexus girl. How can I be Nexus girl? Please let me on your team. And he was like, I don't want to tell anybody what to do. He's like, if you think that you can contribute somehow, go do it. He's like, we all know that we need to do something, so go out there and do it. Do whatever it is that you're passionate about. And I've kind of taken that advice to heart and have done it ever since. And then, of course, you can also invest in Nexus by buying it on one of these 4 exchanges, and then, downloading your wallet and actually starting to stake your Nexus and mine it through the proof of stake mining channel. And this is some of our contact info. The Nexus Hub is where you can put in the information of what you are passionate about, what you want to do, how you want to help. We have a Reddit, Discord, and Slack channels. And then you can also contact our community manager, Preston Smith. And for more information, you can go to nexusearth.com. So, thank you guys.